each sacrifice had 10 to 20 people designated for the sacrifice. You can imagine the multitude, the crowds. And the temple is not so big. And when they went into the temple, sometimes it was so packed that every inch was occupied. They were squished together. And he said there was never, ever, no one was ever crushed, except once. In times of Hillel, one Jew was crushed to death, and it disturbed the whole Pesach. Wherever on that Pesach was called Pesach Me'uchin, the Pesach that a Jew was crushed to death. So that was one Jew. 45. 47.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there was more people than every year. We were there, it was packed. Every year it was packed.
It was wet. They slipped on the steps.
I don't know, there was no difference. As far as crowds, yeah, Friday. It's not the first like moments on Friday. Okay, Friday, everyone wants to come at night because they have to get home. Still, also, I did hear in 1912, I think, the turn of the century, there was a tragedy. 10, 12 people died. But then there was no infrastructure. It was tiny. But here, I understand, because of COVID, the police, because of COVID, created all these foolish type of, forcing everyone to go here. Because of COVID, they basically caused this disaster. Anyway, it's a tragedy all around. It's shocking. What can you say? It's such a holy day, like Omer, during the celebration, at this place. But you did see the unity of the Jewish people. Everyone cried personally, as if it was our father, brother, son. Do you see that the Jewish people are really like one? Every community, every Jew was reeling in shock all over the world. So there's Mashiach has to come. That's the bottom line. The Jewish people are beautiful people. We're a unified people. And it's really time to storm heaven and earth. It's really... So it's a wake-up call for us and for above and high. Enough. The time is now. We can't wait another year till next year, like Bomer, another year in exile, another moment in exile. And this whole year was insane. This is just the top off. The whole year was insane. It's off the rails, off the wall. Makes absolutely no sense. Anything that's been going on in the last year. So this is just to top it off. Total insanity. That's the total insanity of exile. Maybe it's the last push where the baby comes out. It's too painful. It's just too painful. It really is too painful. The rabbis said in the Talmud, Mashiach should come, we shouldn't see it happen. It's just too painful. The tzaddikim, and they got their way. Hashem took away all the tzaddikim. But now we're all crying. Like Vomer, everyone was crying. So everyone feels the last push now. Like literally, this is the biggest tragedy in Israel's history. It's crazy. It's insanity. It makes no sense from any level, no matter how you look at it. The pain is unbearable. And we all feel the pain. Everyone was crying. So it's like, then in the times of the Talmud, only the tzaddikim were crying. Now we're all crying. That means the push is here. This is it. So now it's time for Mashiach to actually come, materialize. Not promises or spiritual dimensions and higher dimensions, deeper dimensions. No, we need it tangibly, literally. We need a good shock to the system. We've had last year a shock to the system. Now we need a good shock to the system, something shockingly good to happen, something that will surprise us, and something incredible, and Mashiach to actually come, literally. 14 million Jews dancing in the Upper East Side of Jerusalem. If this can happen and all this can happen, then surely Mashiach can come, literally. That's what we have to push for. It's time to take the gloves off. We have to push. We have to storm heaven and earth and Hashem make it happen. Relentlessly demand from ourselves, demand from Hashem, demand from ourselves. And it's time to start living a Jewish life, doing more Jewish, speaking more Jewish, thinking more Jewish. Demand of ourselves and demand of Hashem. The time is now. It's time to wake up. It's time for Hashem to reveal himself, to reveal the essence of this world is Hashem. The truth of this world is Hashem. And it's time for that truth to prevail, to emerge, and to take over. And that's it. The world should become a Torah world. And the time is now. And it means us. And it means here. And it means now. And it means actual. It means for real. Just like when a poor person knocks at your door, he needs help. He needs the penny. He needs the dime. He needs the quarter. He needs the dollar bill. He doesn't need talk. He doesn't need words. He doesn't need inspiration. He needs something concrete. Give him a piece of bread. Time for Hashem to give tzedakah, to give us something concrete, not talk, inspiration, hope, spirituality. Hashem, we need it. We need some actual coin in the hand. Something actual, something real. That has to be our focus. Okay. So back to the Siddur, the prayer book. This is where a Jew cries his heart out. This is where a Jew talks to Hashem. This is where a Jew connects with Hashem. Our whole life experiences all connected to the prayer book. And we're up to, on the bottom of page 17, prayer, the sacrifice. Since the prayer corresponds to the sacrifices, the morning prayer corresponds to the morning sacrifice. So we start with the sacrifices. But before we start with the sacrifices, there was an introduction. Before you get to the sacrifices, there's an introduction. The second Torah portion of the book of Leviticus, Parshas Tzav. So we'll read, it's the opening of Parshas Tzav, the opening of the second Torah portion. This was the introduction to the sacrifice. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemer. God spoke to Moshe saying, Tzav is Aaron, command Aaron. Although all mitzvot are called mitzvot, a commandment. But usually the Torah says, Daber, Emor. Here the Torah says tzav, command. Which is unusual. And also you already said, speak to Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, so you should have daber el Aaron, speak to Aaron. It says elsewhere in the Torah, Mor el Aaron, like we just read the Shabbat, speak, say to Aaron, tzav, command Aaron. There's a bun of lamer. What are you to command him? This is the law of the burnt offering. This is the burnt offering shall remain on Moikda, on the firewood and the altar, kol halayla, all night, ada baikin, until the morning. If you do not have time, the offering, the sacrifices were all offered between the morning, beginning with the morning daily sacrifice and concluding with the afternoon daily sacrifice. In between, all the sacrifices were offered. But then, after the sacrifice, and after they sprinkled the blood, they had to offer the different parts of the animal, or in the case of a burnt offering, the entire animal, except for the skin. So they had to offer the animal on the altar. So they could finish it in the afternoon. But the Torah is telling us here, you can burn it all night. You're allowed to burn it all night. It's only the sacrifice, the slaughter has to be during the day and within this window sandwich between the daily morning sacrifice and the afternoon daily sacrifice. But the burning of the fat and the burning of the portions of the animal, in the case of the burnt offering, the burning of the entire animal, that can be done all night. It could be done. Torah is not telling us it must be done. On the contrary, ideally you should burn it during the day. Why delay? But if it's impossible, there were too many sacrifices, you have all night to burn it. But make sure to burn it at night. You can't wait till the next morning, because then you violate the prohibition and you can't leave over. Everything has to be done at the right time. So the time to burn it is at night. Once, if you leave it, if the night is over and already it's dawn, it's the next day, then you can't just bring it onto the altar. It's too late. You can't take the sacrifice that was offered yesterday and burn the leftover, or the parts that have to be burned on the altar, and bring it up to the altar in the morning. If it's already on the altar, then it's one thing. But you can't bring it up to the altar. He says you burn the sacrifice. You could burn it all night till the morning. And the fire of the altar should be kept burning on it. And that's the reason why, in other words, the fire on the altar had to burn 24/7. All day and all night, there was a fire. And that's why Rashi says he uses the unusual expression, tzav, command Aaron. Because there's a lot of money involved. It seems like a waste of money. You know, you may want to save on taxpayer money. What's the point of having the fire burn constantly? It was very expensive. You constantly have to feed the fire, constantly need logs of wood, especially in the desert. Where did you even get wood? They have constantly logs of wood, and you have to constantly have the fire on the altar 24/7. So you need a command. You need, stiffen your spine. You may resist. A waste of money. It's Also, this is not just a commandment for Aaron, it's a commandment for all future generations. So when we have the temple, we have to keep the fire going constantly. So this was the preparation for the sacrifice. Before you even do the sacrifice, you have to have a fire. You have to make the fire. And the fire has to be burning constantly, 24/7. And then he says, this was all before the first morning sacrifice. The kohen should put on his linen garment, his like shirt, which covered his whole body. It wasn't like our shirts. It reached all the way till his feet, all the way to the bottom of his feet. And his pants. Yilvash al basari. And the halacha says that he actually had to wear all four garments. The priest, in order for a priest to do the service, this is part of the service. What we're about to learn, to do, was part of the service of the Kohen. A Kohen can't serve unless he's wearing all four garments. Just like an Israelite can't serve. If an Israelite serves, it's disqualified. The service is disqualified. If a Kohen is not wearing his four garments that are designated him, in addition to the two that the Torah mentions, which is his shirt and his undergarment, In addition to that, he also had to put on his hat and his belt. Then why does the Torah only mention these two garments? There is an opinion that actually says, because that's all he had to wear is these two garments. He didn't have to wear any of the other two garments. But that's not the accepted halacha. Halacha is that he did have to wear all four garments. So why does the Torah then only mention these two garments? So he says, and then he says, Yilbad, he should also wear. So he says, teach me that also to add the other two garments. And he says, because these two garments, he's coming to teach me a law, a special law that relates to these two garments. The Torah says that his shirt that he wore, which covered his whole body, midday bad. Midday means it has to be according to the proper measurement. It can't be too long if it drags on the ground, or if it's too small, it's too tight on it, then it's disqualified. It's as if he's not wearing the garment. It has to fit him perfectly. It can't be too loose, it can't be too tight, it can't be too short, too long. It has to fit him perfectly. The designer suit, it has to fit him perfectly. And therefore, that's where the Torah spells out only out of the four, only the shirt that teaches this specific law. And then he spells out the undergarment because the Torah adds he should wear it on his flesh, on his body. Obviously, where else is he going to wear it? On his pinky, he's talking about his undergarment, truly. But he's coming to teach us that that's the first thing he has to wear, first thing he has to put on. When all he has is his body, he's naked, he is not wearing anything else, because he just went to the mikveh, the Kohen, before he does his services to go to the mikveh. So the first thing he puts on is the undergarment. And only then is it kosher. If he changes the order, first he puts on his shirt and then the undergarment, no, it's not enough for him to take off his shirt. He has to take everything off because he has to put the undergarment when he's naked. All he has is his body, there's nothing else. And then put on the shirt. And then he puts on the hat and then the belt. So he's wearing all four garments. And that's the first service in the temple. He has to remove the ashes. Which ashes? The Torah spells out. Not the ashes from the wood that you're burning. No. The ashes from the burnt offering that you burnt. Yesterday's burnt offering. Probably the afternoon burnt offering that you burned. And the ashes of the offering, you have to take a scoop from those ashes. With some, and you have to place it next to the altar. He would go down the ramp, and then he would walk on the east side of the altar, like around a little more than 9 inches away from the altar. So he shouldn't bring soot to the altar or cause the altar to turn black. And he would walk north side from the foot of the ramp, walk to the north, like 15 feet. There was a spot there, and that's where he would leave the ashes. That was also the spot where they used to bring the crop from the birds that were offered, and also the ashes from the candelabra, and the ashes from the inner altar. They would bring it there. And the Talmud says one of the miracles in the temple, it was all swallowed up in the ground. They used to leave it there, and it was all swallowed up. Then he continues. Fashat es begadim. He removes his clothing. The lavash begadim acherim, and he has to wear other clothing. What do you mean? Talmud says it doesn't mean that he removes his clothing, like we find by the high priest in Yom Kippur. He's constantly changing his clothing. He's removing his the four set of garments with linen, white, and then he puts on the 8 garments. He removes the 8 garments and puts on the 4. So here we're talking about a regular priest. So you would think it means remove his priestly garments and put on his weekday clothing, his regular clothing. No, that's not what he means. He means he also has to wear the 4 garments. He also has to wear the priestly garments. But he has to wear another set of garments. Not as nice as these garments. Maybe it's a little more worn out, can't be torn. Kohen can't do the service with the garments that are torn. And if it's dirty, there's no laundry mat in the temple. Once it's dirty, you don't use it anymore. Everything was rich in the temple. There's no washing, no laundry mat. But it's not the same quality as the garments. And that's what he says. It actually says, why does he have to say he takes off the clothing and then he puts on different clothing? He should have said he puts on different clothing. Obviously, if he puts on different clothing, you understand that he took off the clothing. So he's explaining. The Torah is telling why should he take off his clothing? Because what's he about to do? He's about, he should remove all the ash. It was a whole pile of ash. It's not something he had to do every day. But when the pile became so much, after all the sacrifices, all the ash, everything is reduced to ash. So you would have a big pile. So in the times of the holiday, they would actually make the pile, leave the pile there. It was beautiful. Everyone would see how busy and active the altar was. It was a beauty. But throughout the year, it becomes too much. There's a pile, too much ash. You have to get rid of the ash. The wood won't burn well. It's sitting on top of ash. So it's time to get rid of the ash, to remove the ash. So where do you remove it to? Outside of the camp, outside of Jerusalem. A Makom Torah, but it has to be in a clean place that's pure, not an impure place, but outside the camp. So that's where the pasuk is saying, remove your clothing, because you're about to deal with ash, a lot of ash. The first part, you just took a little scoop of ash from the leftovers, the ash of the burnt offering, and you placed it on the side of the altar, on the side of the fine, side of the ram. But now we're talking about removing all the piled on ash. It could be an accumulation of many days. So you're going to get dirty. So that's what the Torah says. You put on, change clothing, remove that set of clothing, put on clothing that it's not the same quality, so you don't mind if it gets so dirty. You're not going to put on your tuxedo for this type of work. You're working in the backyard. You don't put on your nicest suit. The question remains, wait a minute. The first thing he did, the Kohen did, also involved ash. Yes, it's not as much ash, it's just a scoop of ash. But still, it's also ash. So what do you have to change clothing? And if you're worried about the clothing getting dirty, even the regular service in the temple, you should be worried about getting dirty. The Kohen is slaughtering the animal. Blood is spurting. He's receiving the blood. He's carrying the blood, sprinkling the blood. It's very likely, highly likely, that the Kohen and his garments are going to get dirty. There's blood sprinkling all over the place. You're dealing with the animal. I mean, it's not exactly the cleanest activity. So why suddenly now you're worried about cleanliness? That you say take off the clothing and now put on a lesser set of clothing, lesser set of priestly garments. So Rashi explains, you know what the difference is? It says the difference between in some restaurants, especially today, with COVID, when you can't find any workers anymore because no one wants to work, the owner of the restaurant, he is the owner, he is the chef, and he is the waiter. So there's a difference of how you dress when you're working in the kitchen or how you dress when you're serving the guest. When you're serving the guest, the waiter puts on a tuxedo, put on something nice. You're in front of the boss, or a butler's in front of his boss, in front of the king, you put on your nicest. When you go back in the kitchen to prepare the meal, you change clothing. You're not wearing your finest. You get into the simple clothing. So that's what I said. That's the difference between the first part, when you go and take a scoop, and the second part, when you're removing all the ashes. Not so much why the difference. If you're worried about cleanliness, you should also have the same set of garments when you're removing the ash. He says the difference is when you're removing the ash, you place it right next to the altar in the holy place. So you're in front of Hashem. When you're doing service in front of Hashem, so that when you're slaughtering, yes, there's blood and But when you're doing the service in front of Hashem, you have to be dressed in your finest. And the Kohen would be careful, make sure he shouldn't get any blood sprinkled in him, he shouldn't get any dirt sprinkled in him, he shouldn't get any ash. He'll be careful, he's standing in front of the king. But here, when he's removing the whole entire ash, where's he removing to? He's removing it outside of Jerusalem. So you're away from the king. Yes, he goes up to the altar to take the ash, but that's just the beginning. The purpose is to remove it, to take it away from the palace, take it away from the king. Yes, it has to be in a pure place, not an impure place, but not in the holy place. You're not in front of Hashem. So therefore, now you can change your clothing. If you want, actually. You don't have to. If you want, he's giving good advice, change your clothing. It's not the same. And he says, "Va'eish ala mizbeach," and the fire on the altar, tukad boy, should burn le'sichpe. It's a positive commandment and a prohibition. You're not allowed to extinguish the flame. That's a mitzvah 132 and mitzvah 133. A positive commandment and a prohibition. You have to stroke the fire constantly. You have to put up enough wood during the day. It should light for 24 hours, and you're not allowed to extinguish the flame. If you extinguish even one coal of this fire, you violated the prohibition. You get lashes, you violated the prohibition. And then he says, on top of it, there's a mitzvah for the kohen to add every morning, and the truth is every afternoon, they would add, means every single morning, they would add 2 logs, a special placement of 2 logs, fresh logs of wood. It had to be added to the fire. And the reason why the Torah seems to be repeating so many times, you should make a fire, make a fire, make a fire, the Talmud says, because they made a few fires on the altar. Each fire, each pile of fire, of flame, of wood, served a different purpose. And then in Kippur, they made 4 fires. And they would place on top of it, they would place the burnt offering on top of the wood, on top of the fire. And on it, after it, they would burn all the fat of the peace offerings, which most of it was eaten by the owners, but there were certain portions of fat and different portions of the animal was offered on the altar. So all of this was offered after the morning sacrifice, the morning daily sacrifice. From this we learned only after the morning daily sacrifice, but not after the afternoon daily sacrifice. The afternoon daily sacrifice was the closing sacrifice. You're not allowed to offer any other sacrifice after. The only exception was on Erev Pesach. But the Paschal lamb was offered after the daily afternoon sacrifice. Eish Tamid, and it concludes, it should be a constant fire, tukad, should be lit up, al mizbeach. Sichbe, you're not allowed to extinguish it. Rashi says that the flame for the menorah was taken from the altar. They didn't light a match, they took the fire from the altar and they would use it to light up the candelabras. H Tamid, the flame of the candelabra, which is called the constant fire, because every day you have to light the fire. Where did they take that fire from? From the altar. Okay. So this was the introduction. The introduction to the service in the temple, the introduction to the sacrifice. You have to first make a fire. You have to have a constant fire. In order to offer a sacrifice, to burn the parts of the sacrifice, you have to have a fire on the altar. And the first service was to take away the ash from the altar and put it on the side. And then they took the rest of the ash and they brought it outside. So what does the ash represent? We say this every morning. Why is this the first service in the temple? The introduction to the service in the temple. And this is also the introduction to davening, to prayer. Prayer is a substitute for the sacrifice. So we're quoting the Torah about the removing of the ash. This is the introduction to prayer. What does this mean? So Chassidus explains that the ash represents, when you burn something, everything in this world is a composite, made up of the basic elements. The composite of fire, energy, gas, wind, moisture, water, liquid, and earth. But a different composite is different, it's made up in a different way, and that's why you have different things. What happens when you burn something? What does fire do? Fire breaks it apart, takes the elements and breaks it apart. Before it was all together, compounded, and here it breaks it apart. What happens? The smoke goes up. That's the gas. There's also a moistness. The liquid goes out. The fire is a fire. What are you left with? The earth, the ashes. The earth is indestructible. The ashes, that's what remains. And what does that mean on a personal level? As Alter Rebbe explained in the first part of the Tanya, the end of the first chapter in the Tanya, TanyaClass.com, that the earth represents depression, heaviness. Earth is heavy. It's the lowest element. The earth, you step in the earth represents heaviness. Everything else goes, the moistness is gone, the fire is gone, the gas is gone. What's left? What remains below? Earth, the ashes. So ashes represents heaviness, depression. A person who's depressed is lethargic, feels heavy, very self-conscious. There's no energy, no life. A heaviness, sluggishness slows you down. It weighs on you. It weighs heavily on you. It brings you down. But there's two types of depression. Alter Rebbe explains in the Tanya. Chapter 29, there's two types of depression. There is a depression that has an element of goodness to it. It's like a medicine. Of course, medicine is not an end in itself. There's nothing good about medicine. No one sits down to have a meal of medicine. Maybe in America, people are popping pills right, left, and center. But no one sits down to have a meal of medicine. Medicine is an urgent need. So you take a medicine. But it serves a purpose. It's a medicine. Then you have a depression, which there's nothing good there. You have to banish it. There's nothing good will come of it. There's absolutely not even a spark of goodness left. And that's what it means. Is before a person's davens, it says you have to daven. Before you daven, you have to have koved rosh. You have to take a moral accounting of yourself. You have to be serious. You have to self-examine yourself, a little soul searching. Although if you're going to do a little soul searching and do examining, it won't take much for you to become depressed. When we realize how far we are from our potential. Remember we learned, why does a person make 100 blessings a day? Because what's a blessing? A blessing is to reveal, to actualize potential. It should be in abundance. Because very little of our potential is ever actualized. We want the blessing, it should be in abundance, that we should be blessed to actualize our potential. And because our potential, in most cases, the human condition is, it remains so hidden and so concealed, you need 100 blessings to reveal all that potential. We have abilities we don't even suspect that we have. People in special who serve in the special forces, they develop in them potential that would almost seem miraculous. You would never even suspect you're even capable of doing it. You would never think in a million years you'd even be capable of doing things. We are capable of things we don't even suspect we're capable. mothers whose children are trapped, who lifted up a car, like Hercules, like Shimshon HaGibor. People who are stuck in a fire and they squeezed out of this metal gates. And when they came back, look, it was impossible. It's impossible. They couldn't fit. And they squeezed out of it. So we have such hidden potential. We're barely scratching the surface. We're barely lifting up our pinky. That's the tragedy of the human condition. We need a bracha. Every day we need 100 brachas. We need a powerful force to wake us up, to be able to actualize our potential, to increase, because we're barely, it's nothing what we're. So if a person starts making you start some soul search, that's only not realizing potential, let alone that insult to injury, all the negativity that we do, all the negative actions that we do, and the negative actions and negative speech and negative thought. We're so far away from our potential. We're so far and distant. The way we could be and the way we should be and the way we would ought to be and the way we would like to be. And you look at the reality, it's enough to make you depressed. It's like, what are we doing with our lives? But it's a necessity, prerequisite. Before you daven, you have to have kavod reish. You have to do a little soul search. But the difference is the difference between bitterness and depression. Bitterness is medicine. It's bitter. It's like medicine. Medicine is bitter. But there's an energy to it. There's a life to it. It lights a fire. When a person is bitter, instead of feeling so arrogant, clueless, proud of yourself, so smug and content, like a baby who's sitting in its diapers and feels so happy and feels so good and so comfortable. When a person is so crass and low, as Alter Rebbe says, you don't even realize how crass and low you are. People who are so crass and low are clueless. They have no idea just how ridiculous they are and how crass and low they are. Because we're so smug and content and arrogant and self-satisfied, it's nauseating. So when a person feels a little bitter, it's a wake-up call. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It deflates that ego bubble, that foolish sense of self, that illusionary sense of self that we constructed, and it makes you real. It wakes you up. You become human again. You become humane. You become humble. You become real. You become a real human being who can have compassion on other people, who can love other people, and connect with other people, instead of being so gross and selfish and self-centered and self-absorbed that we become impossible, unbearable. The level of arrogance is just unbearable. And the person who's arrogant is clueless. He's strutting around like a peacock, and he's clueless how ridiculous he sounds, how ridiculous he is. So you need that level of bitterness, but it's bitter. It's a medicine to prick the bubble. It's a necessity. But there's an energy there. When you feel bitter, you're motivated to change. You're motivated to do something about it. I better get my act together. And then you relish, you rediscover that thirst and that hunger to grow and to change and to learn, instead of being so smug and content and self-satisfied. So it's a bitter medicine and has to be administered judiciously. No one sits down to a meal of medicine. It's to be done judiciously, at the right time, at the right place, the right measure, not more, not less. But there's an energy, there's a life. That's one level. But then you have just depression. Depression is demoralizing, because depression is a sense that it's futile, it's hopeless. It's not, I did something wrong. I am wrong. I am defective. If you're defective, then it's hopeless. There's nothing to fix. I might as well just throw it out in the garbage. I mean, what's the point? The more I change, the more I stay the same. I'll just beating up on yourself and becoming depressed. There's no energy. There's no life. There's no change. That's the difference. For example, your house is on fire. So one person grabs a bucket, grabs a pail of water, calls 911, yells to his neighbors, grabs a pail, and starts extinguishing the flame. He's crying. His whole life, his whole house is burning down, but he does something about it. That's bitterness. There's energy, there's life, there's vitality, there's action, there's change. You're fixing, you're doing something about it. Versus a person comes and he sees his house on fire, and what does he do? He sits down on the sidewalk and starts crying. That's depression. It's hopeless. There's nothing I can do. All I can do is cry. There's no life there. There's no energy. There's no hope. Nothing will change. That depression has to be removed altogether. And that's what these two ashes represent. There is the ash, which is a must. It must be part of your repertoire. It must be part of your life. As a matter of fact, it's the introduction. You can't pray. You can't offer a sacrifice until you start, unless you started with removing the ash. This ash is healthy. This ash is good. You take a scoop. It has to be limited. It has to be in the proper measure at the right time. And this was even done at night, before dawn. This was done at night. That's a time to take measure of your life before you go to sleep. It's a time to take measure of your life. It's a time to do a little soul searching. There's a time and a place, very judiciously, a small scoop. You don't have to take a lot. And that you leave next to the altar, on the ground, right next to the altar, because that's good, that's healthy, that's holy. There's energy there, there's life there, it's important, it's essential. A person who's never bitter about anything, a person who's never upset about anything and never examines himself and never does any soul searching and any accounting, any spiritual accounting, it means you're not serious. You don't take life seriously. You don't take yourself seriously, you don't take life seriously. It's not a serious person. It's not a real person. How can you pray? How can you approach Hashem when you have no clue what's going on inside of you? So that's the introduction to prayer. You can't pray otherwise. That's the first step. That's important. It's essential. It must happen every single day. However, then you have removing the ash. It's ash, the rest of the ash, the depression. That has to be completely removed out of the camp. Get it out, away. Nothing good will come of it. There's no room for depression in a Jew's life. The Jew has to be joyful. And even the bitterness leads to joy. It's medicine, but the medicine will trigger your health. Your health is you daven with joy, because once you feel bitter about your situation and you make a strong resolution to change, to better yourself, then you're confident Hashem will forgive you, and then you can daven with Hashem and connect with Hashem with joy. That's the goal. The goal of the medicine is not medicine for the sake of medicine. The goal of the medicine is to trigger some health, a health process in your body, in yourself. Sometimes you have no choice. You're not responding to healthy food. You're not responding to healthy stimulus. So you need a strong medicine to wake you up, to trigger, to regain. But it's only there to trigger the health in your body, to trigger the joy. You don't wallow in that bitterness. But that explains, that's how Chassidus explains the two ashes. The Rebbe also says that the sacrifice, that's how the Fidik Rebbe explains. The Rebbe says that the sacrifice, when a Jew would bring a sacrifice, everything was elevated. Everything was elevated on high. Everything was consumed by the fire, and every part of the animal was elevated on high. What remains? The ash. The ash represents that cannot be elevated. Meaning, there are things in this world that are suitable, material that are suitable to do a mitzvah. The esrog, the willow, the myrtle, the palm branch, they're suitable to be transformed into a mitzvah. The leather hide of an animal, a kosher animal, to be turned into a mezuzah, a Torah scroll, tefillin. So they can be elevated. They can become part of the divine. They become a mitzvah. You're taking a physical object, and now this physical object, like the sacrifice, is elevated. It becomes part of the divine. But then you have parts of your life which are not a mitzvah. which is our daily life, our careers, things that we eat, we drink, things that are not godly. We're not doing a mitzvah. We're going about our daily life. We're living, we're surviving, we're paying our bills. Most of our life, we're not busy all day and every day learning Torah, doing a mitzvah. We're going about our life. But we're going about it in a kosher way. So that's what he says. There's two ways. How do you deal with the ash? That's what the ash represents, the physical, the material that remains grounded in this world. The material, our personal life, our daily life. So what do you do with this ash? So there's two types of ash. There is an ash that you remove out of the camp, out of Jerusalem. Yes, it has to be in a pure place. It's not in a holy place, because I can't call it holy. My activities in my daily life, I'm eating, I'm drinking, I'm sleeping, I'm vacationing, I'm relaxing, I'm doing business. I can't call it a holy activity. I'm not doing anything holy, but it's a kosher activity. And not only is it kosher, it's also pure. I'm not, God forbid, doing anything prohibited. I'm doing business honestly. I'm only eating kosher. But more than that, it's pure, because I am injecting, I'm doing it for the sake of Hashem. Whatever I do, I think to myself, I'm doing business, I should have money in order I should serve Hashem. We have to give tzedakah, raise my family. Being a Jew today is very expensive. You need a lot of money. So whatever I'm doing, I'm motivated in order to serve Hashem. It's a means to an end. I have to eat, I have to be healthy in order I should have the strength to serve Hashem. To serve Hashem, you need strength. If I have a headache and I'm not feeling well and I don't have any energy, I'm lethargic, I don't have the clear mind to study Torah. I can't serve Hashem. I can't daven. I'm too distracted. So everything that I do, I go to sleep. I should have a good night's sleep. So I should wake up, energized. I can serve Hashem. So whatever I do is motivated. There's a pure motivation. The act itself is not holy, but there's a pure motivation to serve Hashem. Then you have ash, which is placed right next to the altar, which is in the courtyard, which is holy. And it was absorbed in the ground miraculously, and it became part of the holiness, part of a holy compound. Meaning, that's a higher level. Not only that whatever I do is for the sake of Hashem, so there's a pure intent, but whatever I do is actually holy. Because when a person sees the divine providence, and you go about your business and you open your eyes and you see the divine providence, everything that you do, that Hashem is with you every step of the way. And you realize that I am Hashem's ambassador. I am here on a mission. I'm not just working in order to pay bills because I have to survive, physically survive. No, this is part of my divine mission. I am serving Hashem while I'm standing in my business, I'm serving Hashem. When I'm eating, I'm serving Hashem. My table is an altar. I'm like the Kohen, and I'm offering a sacrifice to Hashem. I'm elevating the sacrifice. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm here to give. I'm here to contribute. I'm here to bring godliness into the picture. Like a Jew eats on Shabbos, the act of eating is a mitzvah. Everything I do becomes a holy object. My daily life, my personal private life becomes a holy activity. That's a higher level. That's like the higher level of the act. And that's the difference. L'shem Shemayim means like my life is compartmentalized. I serve Hashem. Then I go back to my personal private life. Of course, everything I'm doing in my personal private life is kosher. I'm following all the guidelines. And even more so, whatever I do has a pure motivation. I'm thinking about Hashem. Ultimately, whatever I do is for the sake of Hashem. I have energy, I have strength. So you're injecting Hashem into everything. So that's fine. That's a makom Torah. But then there's a higher level. That my life is not compartmentalized. My personal private life, there's no personal private life. Every part of my life is Hashem. That's how the Rebbe explains the parsha we just read, the Shabbos we just read, Parshas Emor. That it says, the Talmud says, a person eats from this world without making a blessing before you eat, you're stealing. Because it says the world belongs to Hashem. So who gave you a right to eat? You're stealing, it doesn't belong to you. When you make a blessing and you acknowledge Hashem, now Hashem says that Now he gives you permission. So it's very puzzling. What does that mean? I mean, if it's not mine, just because I made a blessing, why am I allowed to eat it? If I come into your property and I bless Chen, and so I start eating from without permission. I mean, just because you made a blessing, if it's stealing, it's stealing. How does making a blessing change it? It's no longer stealing from Hashem. And it says more so, it's like eating from kachim, you're eating from, it's holy, it belongs to Hashem, it's sacred. If a Jew goes and eats from the temple, you desecrate it. It's me'ilah. You have to pay, you have to add, and you have to bring the sacrifice. It's holy, it's sacred, it's off limits. So if the world is holy, it belongs to Hashem, so how does making a bracha change that? Now suddenly it's not holy anymore. So my making a bracha demoted the food. Before the food was holy. Now I made a bracha, and now you're telling me that the food is demoted. So the Rebbe says, no. Making a bracha doesn't demote the food. Making a bracha elevates you. Because it says that a truma, only a kohen is allowed to eat truma, right? Israel is not allowed to eat truma. Be the greatest Jew in the world. The Rebbe cannot eat truma. He's not a kohen. A Jew who eats truma loses his life. You're not allowed to. No matter how holy you are and how pure you are and how many times you go to the mikveh. Only a kohen is allowed to eat. But it says that the wife of the kohen, not only the wife and his children, even his slave, his servant, his slave is allowed to eat from the tree. And even his animal is allowed to eat from the tree. Why? He's a slave. The greatest Jew in the world is not allowed to eat the tree. And this slave is allowed to eat from the tree. And the answer is because now he belongs to the kohen. It's the kohen. He's an extension of the kohen. He's a slave of the kohen. The animal is the animal of the kohen. That's what happens when you make a bracha. When you make a bracha, what you're saying is, by acknowledging, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech, you are my king, my God, meaning I am your servant. So you're elevating yourself. What you're saying is, I don't have a private life. It's not, I have my life. I serve Hashem when it comes to Shabbos. I serve Hashem when it comes to learn to daven, to pray, to do a mitzvah, to study Torah. I have my moments when I serve Hashem, and then I go back to my private life. If that was the case, then you have no right to make it to eat. It's holy, it's sacred, it doesn't belong to you. It's stealing. But once you define yourself, you redefine yourself as Hashem is my God and He is my King and I am His servant, you're Hashem's servant, then you can eat. You can eat what belongs to Him. You're an extension of Hashem. So that's what the ash represents. The ash that was taken from the altar and put right next to the altar. That ash shows that my ash, my physical life, my mundane, which occupies most of my time, my career, eating, drinking, sleeping, whatever it is, that ash, that physical material activity is part of holiness. I am serving Hashem. I'm a servant of Hashem 24/7. I'm His ambassador. I'm here to give and to bring godliness and to bring holiness to everything that I do. That's the higher level. These are the two levels of the ashes. The Torah tells us that you have to have a fire on the altar, a constant fire. And this is key and this is critical. Before we start praying, before we even begin the sacrifice, first step number one is we have to know there has to be a fire all the time. 24/7, as it says in the Talmud. Talmud means even on Shabbat, even though on Shabbat you're not allowed to light a fire, but the Torah says, no, you have to light a fire on Shabbat, on the altar. This fire, not only are you allowed to, but you must. And even if you're in a state of impurity, if there's no one around who's pure to light a fire, if the kohanim are impure, light it even in a state of impurity. Wherever it says Talmud means it has to go on. Pure, impure, light a fire. So the Torah is teaching us something very powerful. And this is the opening to the prayer. Because there are two altars. There's the inner altar and there's the outer altar. What does the altar represent? The altar represents the heart. There's the inner level of the heart and there's the deeper level of the heart and there's the outer, the conscious, the surface level of the heart. The fire represents the passion and love for Hashem. So the inner fire, the inner altar, the inner fire, that fire is constant. Because deep down, every Jew is a pintel yid, every Jew is connected, every Jew is on fire, whether you acknowledge it, you know about it, you're aware of it, you like it, you don't like it, it doesn't change anything. The reality is that every Jew deep down is on fire for Hashem. But the Torah says that's not enough. We need a fire on the outer altar. We need a Jew to be consciously on fire for Hashem. And it's a fire that you have to bring. Because it says miraculously, it's one of the miracles in the temple. There was a fire from heaven. And it crouched like a lion. The first temple was crouched like a lion. And that flame was on the altar 24/7, which is the way the Chinuch says, why does Hashem tell us we have to have a fire, light a fire 24/7? Because Hashem likes, as much as possible, we like to cover up in miracles. We don't like to parade miracles. Hashem created the world of nature for a reason. So when there was such an obvious miracle, 24/7, you had the fire from heaven. And miraculously, the rain never extinguished the fire. Never extinguished the fire. So Hashem wants us to cover up as much as possible. So and-so a fire is, because they're burning, they're making a fire. There's a mitzvah from our part that we have to light a fire and make sure there's a fire, a human fire, 24/7. So you had a human fire and you have a heavenly fire. The human fire was there to cover up, to gloss over on this astounding miracle. But what's the obligation? The mitzvah is that we have to light a fire. That on a conscious level, we should be on fire. By the way, it doesn't say Hashem didn't make a miracle, it never rained over the altar. Never said that. It does rain. Miraculously, the fire never went out. There are problems, there are obstacles, and miraculously, the fire never goes out. And he says, even if you're in a state of impurity, don't give up. Don't say, how can I pray? How can I approach Hashem? What connection do I have to prayer? I'm soiled. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm in a state of impurity. How can I pray and put effort into my prayer and come close to Hashem? Who am I kidding? I'm being hypocritical. That's not my life. Look at my life. I'm so far. I'm so distant. I'm the opposite. My life is the opposite of everything that the Torah, everything that prayer stands for. How can I stand in front of Hashem? I'm so ashamed and embarrassed. He says, no, don't be embarrassed, even in a state of impurity. You have to light that fire. Never give up hope. And even on Shabbat, a Jew is in a different dimension. It's a day of pleasure. You're communing with Hashem. You're one with Hashem. Pure pleasure, pure ecstasy. Shabbat is a day of pleasure. Ecstasy, what do I care about? The heart. My conscious love for Hashem, I should feel that heat. I should feel the love. I should feel the warmth. I'm an intellectual person. I don't need to feel love or emotions. I'm beyond emotions. I'm pure intellect, pure pleasure, ecstasy. It seems like trivial. Why is it so important for me to develop and to stroke the flame, the heat, the warmth, and my heart, literally my heart, my conscious heart, the external level of the heart, the surface of the heart, should be on fire. I should feel the heat and the warmth and the love for Hashem. Why is it so critical? That's what the Torah is telling us. This is critical. 24/7 under all circumstances, even on Shabbat. You think you're so lofty, you think you're so great, you're so deep, profound. I'm not into love. I don't need love. I'm beyond that. I'm pure mind, pure intellect, pure pleasure. Or I feel soiled. I'm impure. I'm embarrassed. How can I approach Hashem? Torah says no. The love for Hashem is essential. Yes, there's a fire from above. Every Jew has a fire from above. Hashem gave us. We're born with a godly soul. So we have that fire. We have that flame deep down inside. It's there. But that's not enough. And even if Hashem inspires us, occasionally Hashem even inspires us. The fire comes from above. We feel inspired. We're on fire. Hashem says, no, we need your inspiration. We need your effort. We need you to light the fire. And you have to feel that fire in your heart. It's labor intensive. It's hard work. But it's real. If you want to make a dent in your human personality, in human character, you want to affect your true self, your ego nature, your regular self. If you want every part of you, Hashem wants every part of you to feel connected with Hashem. The good, the bad, the ugly, every part of you. You have, unless you get the heart, unless your heart is on fire, then your animal soul, your ego nature is completely tuned out. You've left out, you're dancing with the angels, your pure intellect and pure pleasure, but you left your human personality, the nitty gritty you left out of the picture. You're not going to make a dent. You're not going to make any change. Hashem wants all of you, every part of you. And for that, the only way to reach yourself, to make a change in yourself, is only if your heart is literally pumping, if your heart is on fire, your heart, if you feel the warmth and the heat on the conscious level. That takes effort. You have to light a fire every morning and every day, and make sure the fire is constant, not only during the day, but also during the night, Shabbat, all the time. No matter if you're in a high or in a low, impurity, you always have to stroke the fire, stroke the flame. You should feel that love for Hashem, that connection with Hashem. Although the verse says that there's a mitzvah, you can burn the animal sacrifice all night on the fire, the leftover, the parts that have to be burned. Practically, Maimonides says that the rabbis made a decree that only until midnight, just like they made a decree that although you can read the Shema all night, but the rabbis say you should only read it till midnight. Ideally, initially, you should only read it till midnight. If you forget, of course, you can read it till dawn, but that's ideal. So too, even in the temple, they made a decree that the priests would only burn the animal, leftover of the animal, on the altar only till midnight. Rashi disagrees. Rashi says, no, there was no such decree. When it comes to the priestly service, there was no such decree. Maimonides says, how can Maimonides say that there is such a decree when the Torah says clearly, it's a clear verse in the Torah, that it's a mitzvah to burn the burnt offering till all night? How could the rabbis go against the Torah? The rabbis can make a fence, but they can't go against an explicit instruction of the Torah. The Torah says clearly it should be all night, and the rabbis say no. The Rebbe explains, no, the Torah is not telling us it's a mitzvah to burn it all night. The ideal time to burn the sacrifice is during the day, as soon as it's offered. The offering had to end by the last offering was in the afternoon, middle of the afternoon. So ideally, you should burn everything during the day. That's the mitzvah. That's the ideal time to do everything. But if you didn't do it, the Torah says, make sure, don't violate. If you're going to leave the sacrifice on the floor outside the altar, and then you're going to wake up and by dawn, let me bring it up the altar, then it's too late. And you violated the prohibition. It's left over. So in order to make sure you shouldn't violate a prohibition, make sure to burn it at night. So the Torah is giving you permission. It's not commanding you explicitly. I'm ordering you, this is a mitzvah, I'm fulfilling a positive thing. No, a positive thing, you should do it during the day. That's ideal. But if you didn't, at least don't violate the prohibition. Don't leave it off the altar. Make sure to burn it at night. If the rabbis could make this decree against that by midnight the service had to stop in the temple. No Kohen was allowed to burn any sacrifices, leftover the sacrifices past midnight. That's Maimonides' opinion. And he says you have to burn your fats, you have to burn the parts of the animal, the fat on the fire. Now, when he says Tzav Aaron. This is a command. Unusual. Usually he says, speak to Aaron. Abba, Emor, like we just read the Shabbat. Emor, say to Aaron. Tzav is a command. Although all the mitzvah, all 613, even those where it says daber, speak to, Emor, and say, it's a commandment. They all share that. It's a commandment. It's a mitzvah. It's not a suggestion. The 10 commandments are not suggestions. It's not 10 suggestions or 613 suggestions. They're commandments. They're obligations. We're duty bound. But nevertheless, there is a difference when the Torah says daber, emor, or tzav. Daber, I'm speaking to you. But a person has freedom of choice. Either you're going to listen, choose to listen, or you're going to choose not to listen. I'm not forcing you. I'm giving you a choice. Daber, I'm speaking to you. I'm hoping that you're going to listen. Yes, I'm ordering. I'm telling you. I'm speaking to you. So everything I'm telling you and I'm speaking to you, it's a commandment. It's not an option. It's not voluntary. But a person has choice. Tzav, however, is like I'm ordering you. It's more than just speaking. It's like I'm ordering. In other words, I'm more certain. When Hashem says tzav, this is serious. This is, it hits home. That this is very real. And this must get done. It's so important. It's so critical. Even like the Rebbe says, he gives suggestions. Like the Rebbe says, he would very rarely order you to do something. He would tell you, sometimes tell you a little stronger. Daber means he speaks a little stronger. Emor is more gentle. So obviously, whatever the Rebbe tells you, it's a commandment. It means it's not optional. He's telling you this is what you have to do. And you're smart enough to know, yes, I have to do this. It's a mitzvah. But he didn't phrase it that way. Telling you, speaking to you, I'm telling you. But in the rare case where he says, I'm ordering you, tzav means I'm ordering you. I'm not asking you. I'm ordering you. This is very serious. This is very real. There's no monkey business. It's not optional. So in other words, every mitzvah is a mitzvah. It connects us with Hashem. The fact that Hashem is even commanding us already is a connection. The fact that we have a connection to Hashem, He's commanding us, already creates a connection. Especially when we fulfill the mitzvah, that creates the real connection. But when He orders us, tzav, it reaches very deep down inside of us. A place where a Jew really has no choice. He has no option. For a Jew, to be disconnected from Hashem, it's really not an option. The root of the word mitzvah means connection. To be disconnected from Hashem is not an option. It's simply not an option. To think that we could be disconnected, it's delusional. It's part of our delusion. So we think, I have an option. Well, maybe I won't listen. Hashem is telling me, but maybe I'll choose not to listen. It's a delusion. Deep down inside, it's not even an option for us to be disconnected from Hashem. But we forget. We're disconnected. We don't realize. I still think I'm Jewish. I'm okay with Hashem. You didn't listen. How could you disconnect yourself from Hashem? How can you not listen? Okay, so it's part of my delusion. But when Hashem orders us, He says, tzav, here, I can't delude myself. It's Hashem is not speaking. He's not speaking to us, not gently, not even strongly. Hashem is saying, I'm ordering this. So that touches us very deep. Now we know, okay, if I'm a Jew, I'm connected with Hashem. It's not even an option. How can I not do what Hashem is ordering? It's not an option. Of course I'm going to do what Hashem is ordering. So He's saying that in order to give over, not only for ourselves, but all future generations, and a place where there is a lack of money, costs a lot of money, in order to have an impact, not only on myself, but also on my money and whatever is around me, you have to bring out, you have to reveal that deeper connection. If our Judaism is surface and superficial, if Hashem is just speaking to us, even speaking strongly, which are usually the mitzvot, which are gevura, which are from the left side, like the left hand. Then there are mitzvot, which are kindness, tzedakah, which comes from the right hand. Hashem says emor, he speaks gently, speaking to the Kohanim are from the right, everything is gentle. But then you have the center. In order to guarantee that you're going to transmit your Yiddishkeit to the next generation and the next generation, all future generations, it's not going to remain with you. You have to be really centered. You have to be really connected. And in order to have an impact on your environment, everything around you, not just yourself, but the money and everything around you, you really have to be connected. And that connection has to be like the center. The center is all connected, it's all one. Not like you have the right brain and you have the right arm and the right leg. It's all on the same side, but they're all three disconnected. You have the left brain and you have the left arm and the left leg. They're disconnected. Here, it's all connected. The limbic brain, the heart, the male organ, it's all connected. It's all one. So tzav, when Hashem orders us, he's evoking the center of the Jew, the core of the Jew. And once you evoke the core of the Jew, it will get done. It's not even a question. And it won't remain with me. It will be transmitted to my children and my grandchildren, that connection, the depth of that, the truth of that connection. And it won't just affect me, it's going to affect everything around me because it's so real. It's so overtly real. So tzav brings out that connection in the strongest way possible. And when you have that inner connection, then it does not remain in your inner heart. It also manifests itself overtly, that your heart is on fire. And therefore, everything around you is affected. Your children are affected, your grandchildren are affected, your surroundings are affected, because your Yiddishkeit is so real and so plugged in and so alive and so centered and focused. It's grounded, it's connected, and it's something that will keep the torch and the flame of Judaism alive forever and ever, throughout every part of my personal life and forever and ever, children, grandchildren, and the environment around me. And we all become like a fire, a flame that illuminates, that lights up, and a torch lights up. And from here, you light the candelabra. So we light up the outside. The altar was on the outside. And even at night when it's dark, 24/7, fire is going. We stroke the flames, we stroke the fire. And that's why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made the statement. Whenever there's a financial loss, you need that extra, Hashem says, I'm ordering you. I'm not speak gently or even speak strongly. I'm ordering you. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the reason why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai resonates so deeply with every Jew, the largest gathering of Jews ever in the world. Every year is Rajbi. There's no celebration ever in the year like a Lag BaOmer. You literally get a taste of Mashiach. Literally, anyone who's been there literally experiences. Because he was the torch, he was the light. He was the light and the torch. The Zohar that lit up and kept, in the darkest times of our exile, kept the hope and the flame and kept the belief in Mashiach and the warmth of Yiddishkeit and the life and the soul of Yiddishkeit, kept it alive. That's why, of course, the tragedy hit home so deeply. It's inexplicable to us. We can't understand. It's incomprehensible. But as a wise man once said, we have 13 animamins, but we don't even have one animavin. 13 expressions of faith, but we don't even have one animavin because we don't understand. It's a tragedy of such magnitude that we're just stunned into silence. It's just incomprehensible to us. But this is the fire. This is the flame. This is the introduction to davening. Next week, please God, we're going to start with the sacrifices. If anyone has any comments, questions, thoughts? You agree?
Rabbi, If you have a few minutes, I have an 8 o'clock class, but I had a question from last week, if you recall, about the Shema and the covering of the eyes. Do we have time for an answer?
Yes. Why do we cover our eyes? So the simple reason is that to remove any distraction. Shema Yisrael, we're saying something so profound, something so counterintuitive, that if you look around you, it's hard to believe. You say Hashem Echad in the ultimate sense, that there's no other reality but Hashem, and you look around, really? I see myself, I see a big world out there. I see a world that doesn't even acknowledge Hashem, let alone that there's no other reality but Hashem. A whole world doesn't even acknowledge Hashem, period. And here I'm saying Hashem Echad, the world is nullified, the world is unified, and in the absolute unity of Hashem, Hashem, the world is one, and the world is one with Hashem. God is Alt, Alt is God, everything is God, God is everything. You open your eyes, you look, you don't see it. It's very difficult. You can understand something in your brain conceptually from today till tomorrow, but what I see with my eyes, it's you know, if Einstein came and proved to you that it was dark outside, 10 Einsteins proved to you with irrefutable logic that it was dark outside. You look at your eyes and you see a sun, very hard. I'm sorry, I see the sun. It's very nice. Here you're saying Hashem Echad, but with our eyes, I see a world. I see a big world that it completely ignores Hashem, as if he doesn't even exist, God forbid. And here I'm saying not only God exists, not only God runs and controls the world, not only is God unified, but that we are unified within the unity of Hashem. Nothing exists besides Hashem. Hashem is alone. It's so counterintuitive. A goy can't even understand that. It makes absolutely no sense. So for a Jew, twice a day, we have to close our eyes. Forget what your lying eyes are telling you. That's nonsense. The reality is Hashem Echad. And that's the foundation of Jewish faith. Everything flows from there. It's the ultimate expression. If it's just to proclaim that we believe in monotheism, we believe in one God and two gods, firstly, why do you have to say it twice a day? It's elementary. That's simple. Why do you have to close your eyes and concentrate? But since we mean on the deepest level, Hashem Echad is only one reality, that you have to close your eyes, cover your eyes, concentrate, really, really get it, really experience it. Then when you open your eyes, I see a different world. I see a world that expresses Hashem every step of the way. Any other questions?
Thank you, Rabbi.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
So everyone have a great week. Only good news to be continued. 2 weeks is Shavuos. By the way, my parents are coming for Shavuos. My father is going to be in for Shavuos. So if you're in town, please come and enjoy. Be a very special holiday here. And to be continued.
All night learning?
All night learning, of course. and blintzes and cheesecakes. And
I'm in.
Okay. Yes. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.